Dan, I'm just checking if you can hear.
Loud and clear.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this agenda briefing forum. This evening is not a decision-making forum. It is a briefing on the agenda for the Ordinary Council meeting, which will be held next Tuesday, the 26th of April. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This evening, Councillor Clark, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Maleka are apologies, and Councillors Peterson Pick and Ostaszowski are on approved leave of absence. Councillor Bull is attending via electronic means, and all other councillors are present in the chambers this evening. Tonight we have 5 deputations. 2 have been submitted in writing and 3 will be presented in person. Members of the gallery and deputies, welcome to tonight's agenda briefing session. I will explain how the deputation process will work for you here for the first time. Each person who is presenting a deputation will be invited to come forward and speak at the microphone. You will be invited to speak for up to 5 minutes, and as we get close to the 5 minutes, I will let you know so that you can conclude your deputation. After your deputation, councillors may have some questions for you. If you are speaking on the same item as another deputy, you're welcome to speak for up to 5 minutes also. However, it would be appreciated if you could add additional information rather than simply repeating what has already been presented. Once the deputations have been completed, we will go through the rest of the agenda and councillors can ask questions on any of the reports on the agenda. This is not a decision-making evening, as we will meet next week where the agenda will be put forward and councillors will vote on the items. So I'd like to first invite Mr. David Dyke to come up to the microphone for your deputation in relation to item 10.2.5, review of keeping and control of cats local law.
Excuse me, Mayor, just very quickly.
Yes?
I just would like to declare a proximity interest on this item. Gobber Lake is listed as one of the natural areas now in consideration in the updated report. I live opposite Gobber Lake, it's proximity interest, and so I will leave the meeting during the deputations if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bull. Please go ahead.
David Dyke, View Street in Maylands. I use a metaphor of candle in the wind for this deputation. One that when I went to the AGM, almost everybody...
Sorry, Mr. Dyke. Yes, Councillor.
I'm really sorry. I haven't been put in the waiting room yet, that's all. Just conscious of making sure I do the right thing.
Thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Dyke.
Sorry. All good? Please continue. Sorry for that.
I'll start again. I'll use a metaphor of candle in the wind. When I went to the AGM and put this motion forward, it was almost out. Nobody was taking any interest. Nobody was looking at what was happening in the environment. I now go to all these lights that represent councillors, everybody in this room, friends groups, all sorts of different people are now interested in what's happening in the environment and looking after our wildlife. I also will bring in later in it Aboriginal culture, which hasn't necessarily been brought in. I want to publicly recognise the research, dedication and effort put into the recommendation by Mark Thornber and the backing of all his team. Also the time and effort with submissions and deputations by Friends Group, Environmental House, individuals and others. I commend the collaboration between groups such as council staff, Alex Devine and other in the environmental section, councillors, directors and many others. I agree with the increased recommendation from 9 to 42 proposed cat prohibited sites in the draft local law, the substantial increase being agreed in the recent concept forum by the many city officers' branches. Ideally, I would have liked to have containment. However, I fully appreciate the current restrictions with JSCDL in using that word. In addition, I have been alerted that there may be places near to the 42 sites where we can have containment. There needs to be built into this draft a comprehensive education program. And I just alert to everybody, we still have at least 6 or 12 months of where this will go through. A wider implication that has not been considered so far is the natural, cultural and heritage aspect mentioned in our new RAP, recently approved by Reconciliation Australia. In the RAP, it doesn't specifically mention wildlife. However, it does mention protecting our natural cultural heritage. Within that concept, Aboriginal culture embodies a comprehensive totemic system, as described by Dr. Noel Nannup in the cultural story of The Carers of Everything. I therefore ask the question, has the RAP committee and specifically Elder for City of Bayswater, Barry Maguire, been consulted about the desecration of their totems and done by the introduction of predators, namely cats and foxes? This short story hits me right there. In the last 2 weeks, 3 people who live around Barden Park have come to me about seeing different cats with buff-banded rail in their mouths. We had about 12 in one particular spot. Looks like now we only have left a few. I agree with the City of Bayswater having a clear intent of basic responsible cat ownership and stated owners' basic responsibilities. I'm fully aware that this cannot be enforced legally. However, it gives everyone a clear message of intent. This could be given to all owners when they register their cat. An example of that is City of Joondalup. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. I'll ask councillors if there are any questions. No, thank you very much, Mr. Dyke. I'll now ask Rachel Roberts to come up and speak on the item 10.2.5, review of keeping and control of cats local law.
Thank you. Is it masks on or masks off? Can you hear me? If you can hear me,
If
I'll
you,
leave. Sorry,
on
if
the
you can,
microphone
If you can
will be-
hear me, I'll leave it on. If not, then it's hard to follow that act. And I also want to acknowledge David Dyke's enormous amount of work he's done in this area. And sometimes it takes individuals with a real passion for something, someone who's actually out there standing in the wetlands at night watching what's going on when the rest of us are in bed, and not really aware of any of it. So I really like to thank him because he raised it with me quite a few times, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm too busy. And eventually he got through to me. So hopefully he will get through to everybody else as well, including cat owners. And I've been amazed by how many responsible cat owners we have in the city of Bayswater. I wasn't aware of how many people are already doing the right thing and feeling quite put upon that their actions aren't being recognised as widely as perhaps they could be in trying to help the environment. When I put things on Facebook, I've only had people come back to me saying, I'm already doing that. I think everyone should be doing that. So it's been amazing to me as well. My deputation, I've been thinking about this for about 2 months. Like everyone else, it's quite complicated. I think I put 5 hours into it this morning, just trying to figure out where we should go in a way that takes us forward. And doesn't just leave us with another set of laws that may not result in wildlife not being killed. So one of the first things I thought we really need to do is clarify that we're all on the same page. So the community, council, officers, and I thought one of the easiest ways to do that was to follow City of Joondalup's lead and actually they've got a 5-point owner's basic responsibilities on their webpage. So when you open that up, 5 points come up. And what I like about those points is they kind of summarise where we've been with cat laws and where we're going. So I've sent the link to all the councillors and put it in the deputation. And I mean, the first 3 points refer to where we already have laws. So you must be registered, sterilised and microchipped, your cat must be. Your cat must wear a collar displaying council registration tag. It's recommended you include a name tag with the owner's name and contact number, all things that we already have laws for. The next 2 points, and they go point 5, contain your cat to your own property. So it's not law, it's a voluntary code. It's a position statement from the council to say, this is what we expect from you and this is where we're heading. And the last point is keep your cat indoors at night. So just 2 really clear expectations that you're not going to be fined if you don't, but the council is putting right up there, up front, this is where we're going. We know this is where we're going because we had a review of the Cat Act 2011 in 2019, and that review was absolutely clear about the fact that we are heading towards cat containment as being the only way to protect wildlife and also nuisance cats in other people's backyards, which a lot of people complain about. And hopefully, when I'm sitting at school with year 3s and I talk about this and they all say to me, we lost our cat got run over. Like, all the stories were all the things that went wrong with their cats. So hopefully, with the cat welfare agencies all in support of this happy at home idea. So there seems to be a lot of consensus around where we're going. The second point was I think we should get some legal advice. I think the City of Bayswater should invest in some legal advice to work out exactly what we can do and can't do. I refer you to page 94 of your council papers, and there it's got legislative requirements. And so under section 79.3 of the Cat Act, a local law may be made in relation to one or more of the following. It's very clear about what councils can make laws on. G says requiring that in specified areas a portion of the premises on which a cat is kept must be enclosed in a manner capable of confining cats. We can have cat containment in local laws if it is in a specified area. So we cannot say it for across the whole of council, but we can specify areas, which means we could make a start. Because prohibiting a cat, the cat doesn't know that. The cat doesn't know that it's not allowed in the wetlands. Catching the cat is incredibly expensive and time-consuming for ratepayers to have to fund. The only financially sustainable way forward is for people to be containing their own cats so we don't have to go through all of that expense. And catching a cat once might be easy, catching it twice is almost impossible. So you return the cat, there's a penalty of $250 to the owner, it gets out again, you're not going to catch that cat again. So, you know, there's all these difficulties. So with the containment, we would ask that a map be drawn, we call it phase 1 if you like, and we talk about a slow introduction of containment few more minutes, a slow introduction of containment around those areas with education, with all of the supports that those residents might need, with the idea that the people know beyond that line, containment will also be coming to them.
So I'll
It's not
just ask if
sorry.
you could conclude, because you've hit the
So we're
5
not
minutes.
targeting one set, we're just starting with that, like a trial. How can this work? Because sustainability-wise, financially, for our wildlife, that's where we have to be heading. So I would ask you to consider making that adjustment and put containment in. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. I'll just, before you sit down, I'll just ask councillors if they have any questions of you. Any questions? No? Thank you very much for your
Okay.
deputation.
Thank you.
Councillors, the third deputation we received in relation to item 10.2.5 was from Mr Jeff Trott, Chairman of Friends of Maylands Lakes, who has submitted a written deputation. I believe that's being distributed to all councillors. So I'll just ask the minute taker if we could bring Councillor Bull back into the room. So, Dan, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay. So we're just up to the next deputation, which is in relation to item 10.3.1. Miss Anna Husker submitted a written deputation in support of the officer's recommendation, and that was the low-cost urban road safety program, Bayswater Precinct, and that's been distributed to all councillors. I'll now invite Mr Jeremy Hoffland to come up to the microphone in relation to item 10.4.1. Speaking against the officer's recommendation.
Good evening. Sorry. Good evening, elected members and staff. My name is Jeremy Hoffland. I'm speaking in relation to the matter for 45 Gummery Street. I work for Rowe Group, Town Planning Consultancy, and I'm representing Mark Smarilli, who owns the property together with his wife. They would have wanted to be here this evening. Unfortunately, with family and work commitments, they weren't able to make it. They've passed on a couple of points to me that they asked that I raise. The first thing I wanted to raise is, aside from that, is in reading the staff report, it doesn't appear to make mention of the fact that the proponent is offering to replace or offset the loss of the proposed tree, should it be removed, with the planting of 5 additional trees at the discretion of the city. It doesn't seem to be mentioned in there. Certainly it was noted in our subdivision application, and it's also noted in our development application, in our written material. It doesn't appear to be included as an attachment, but I wonder if that's something that could be examined more closely. Certainly that was always the intention, that there be that offset. And certainly that comes through in a number of the points which are recommended for refusal by staff. So I'll try and keep the submission brief, but thank you very much for the opportunity. In terms of the first reason for refusal, where it talks about alternative options for providing vehicle access, certainly those are matters that have been considered by the proponent. From their view, it certainly would make a more convoluted entry and exit into the property, make it more difficult for any commercial vehicles if they should be delivered, undertaking deliveries to the site, more difficult for less experienced drivers or older people. So certainly that's something that they don't view as being desirable. The other point that they wish to raise is the property has 2 verge trees and we're only seeking to remove 1. It seems to be quite inconsistent along the street. There are many properties that don't have a verge tree at all. there are some that have one tree, and this is the only property in the street that has 2 verge trees. So on that basis, it was considered that it wouldn't be too far out of compliance, considering that there is still a tree retained. The other point was that offsetting the loss of that proposed removal with 5 additional trees would definitely contribute to the city's objective to increase tree canopy coverage to 20% by 2025, which would be consistent with the city's tree removal policies. We'd also note that the comment by the staff in relation to the residential design codes in terms of reducing impact on the streetscape, we would note that the reference in that document refers to high quality landscaping features. That doesn't specify verge trees, and certainly the applicant would be quite amenable to any other enhancements within the verge or other proposals which would assist in satisfying that requirement. And I think I guess the key aspect, what the client has asked me to say, is that in terms of this proposal and the removal of the tree, he's not a large-scale developer. This is his property which he's held on to for some time for the purpose of his superannuation, undertaking a future subdivision and development. It's the intention to remove the tree and propose the alignment for the access is really to provide a safe, straightforward subdivision which would accommodate an increased population for the locality, with the intention to complete it to a higher standard. So that was really all I needed to say on his behalf.
Thank you for your deputation. I believe there's a question from the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry, just a question in relation to the plans there, and I'll be out, checking with officers later to see the condition of the other tree. But on page 324 of the report, it shows an image of the 2 verge trees, and the one wishing to be removed looks very healthy, and the other one actually looks to be in quite poor health. Subject to the condition of that tree, is there a possibility of the plan being flipped so that that would be, if that tree is recommended for removal because of its condition, not saying it is in a condition to be removed, just hypothesising, could the plan be flipped and that be a suitable compromise?
The intention is to retain the existing dwelling on the site. Unfortunately, the dwelling is built quite close to that boundary, which would be the northwestern boundary, where that unhealthy tree is, for want of a better word. When we initially lodged the application around August of last year, the subdivision application, the trees were in good health, both trees at that time. This is something that's transpired over the summer period. I know there is some commentary in the report, but unfortunately, no, to answer your question, it wouldn't be possible to flip it and still retain the house on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? I just have a question in regards to the 5 additional trees that you're talking about. So obviously I haven't heard about that previously. Where are the applicants suggesting to plant the 5 additional trees?
Well, that would be at the discretion of the city, whether it's in an established park, whether it's in other street verges, other alternative locations. We haven't specified a location. It's completely up to the city as to what their preference might be.
So they're not suggesting to plant it on their verge?
No.
No, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for... Oh, sorry, Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, and thank you for that. And yes, I was curious about the 5 trees as well, so thank you. How many other additional trees will be removed on the property as a result of this development?
I'd have to check, but I'll have a look at the survey plan, which should give an indication. I can't just recall offhand. Certainly the intention of proposing the access where it is that it will demolish a carport and a garage. It looks, in looking at this plan, it does look like there is vegetation at the rear of the property, but I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact number of trees. Certainly that is something that we can examine and come back to you with.
Thank you. Nothing else.
Thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for those in the gallery, we will now be asking if there are any questions on items on the agenda, so please feel free to leave if you wish. Councillors will first consider items that were subject of deputations. So I'll go through. Does anyone have any questions in relation to item 10.2.5 for the officers? Sorry, I'll just check with Councillor Bull because this is, he has proximity interest.
Yeah, that's right. So if someone has a question, probably best for me to leave the room.
Yep, so Councillor Johnson does have a question.
Okay, I'm happy to be put in the waiting room. Thank you.
I'll just make sure that happens first, Councillor Johnson.
Appreciate it.
If the minute taker could just confirm once that's been done. I'll just check. Councillor Bull, are you there? No. Okay. Councillor Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you for that. In relation to some of the deputations that we heard, like we had some suggestions for changes, is it possible for, what would be the process perhaps for the officers about if we could incorporate those changes before next week?
I'll just go to the relevant director.
Through the chair, I'll refer to the officers here. Is it okay?
Suppose the process of adding those changes would probably be to propose an alternative motion. It would just depend on what those changes were, whether they were actually feasible and might be something that would pass through the Joint Standing Committee of Delegated Legislation.
Okay, thank you. So it's a bit difficult. So some of the changes, some of the recommendations that we heard from was about getting legal advice. And I don't know. I would like to be really ambitious. To be clear, I'd like to be ambitious about what we're trying to do and not let whatever the Joint Standing Committee might or might not say kind of stop us from going ahead with what we'd like to be able to achieve. So just wondering how that works in that time frame. If this.
So is the question whether we could obtain legal advice prior to next week?
Yeah.
We could attempt to, but I wouldn't be convinced that we would necessarily receive the advice back within that short period of time.
Thank you. And are we able to do that without a decision of council? I'm just trying to think through how we could do that.
I'll go to the acting CEO for advice on that.
Thank you. Look, I think the first thing the council would need to be sure about is what is the legal advice we're seeking specifically, and so that it is absolutely categoric, and what is the reason for seeking the legal advice. It certainly could be obtained without a council resolution, but this subject has been around for a considerable period of time, and I'd be surprised if we haven't received advice on the general subject, not necessarily the specific issue that's been raised.
Yes, I'm not really sure how to proceed with that. With the idea of signalling our intent, is that something that we can do as part of this, or it's not necessary to do it as part of this review of the CAD Act? Is that something we can do anyway?
I'll go to the acting CEO.
So I'm not quite clear on what the intent of that question is. Could you?
Sorry. So to clarify, if we were to do something like, as was mentioned in the deputations, the City of Joondalup has done on their website, saying things like cats should be kept on your property and cats should be kept indoors at night, without it being written into our cat law necessarily, is that something that we could just do already outside this process?
Yes, I would consider that to be an administrative action.
Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, I was just going to say, Mr. Fearing, when you speak, could you just put the microphone just a little bit closer to your mouth because I found it difficult to hear.
Oh, right, okay.
Any other questions on this item, councillors? No, thank you very much. Could we please get Councillor Bull back in the room? Councillor Bull, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll now, I'll now ask councillors if they have any questions in relation to item 10.3.1, low-cost urban road safety program, Bayswater Precinct. Any questions on this item? Councillor Bull? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bull.
Likewise, I have a proximity interest on this one. I live in the area, so I will leave the room. It'll be a simple process.
Councillor Bull?
Thank you. So 10.3.1. Wondering if someone could step through for me the amendments that were made to the draft plan that went out for consultation and the plan that's in here reflecting feedback from the consultation.
I'll go to the director.
Yeah, I think if we could get the project officer to come and address that one, Mr. Stacey.
Considerable amount of information.
Sorry, the other.
The right one, not the wrong one. There was considerable amount of information to go through on this and different arguments put forward. I had to evaluate basically whether they agreed or disagreed with the treatment that was provided, and simply if there were more in disagree than agreed, we removed the treatment. It's as simple as I can make it.
Thank you. Just to follow up, would it be possible to receive some information on what changes were made to the draft plan that is now presented?
Yes, certainly. I've got there's a spreadsheet that has how many agreed and how many disagreed, and there's also a plan that showed you the X'd out treatments that were submitted for comment.
That would be fantastic if that is able to be distributed at some point before the meeting next week. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? If not, we'll get Councillor Johnson back in the room. Councillors, are there any questions on item 10.4.1, proposed street tree removal for subdivision of land, 45 Gummery Street, Bedford? Deputy Mayor?
I did have that one pulled for a question, but I no longer need to ask that.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? No. So I'll now go through items that councillors have advised in advance that they would like to ask questions on. And I have received one from the Deputy Mayor for item 10.4. Oh, we've just done that one. So it's item 10.4.3.
Thank you. I'd also like to declare an interest on this one. It's an impartial interest. My mother owns property directly across the road from this proposed development.
Sorry, Councillor Ball, yes?
Thank you. I'll just declare a financial interest on this one. The proponent used to be a client of mine, so I'd like to leave the meeting for this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Just get confirmation from the minute taker when Councillor Bull is in the waiting room. Okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a query in relation to recommendation 4C, where it recommends the colour for the external portions of the upper floor slab shall all be black in accordance with the JDAP approved plans dated 9th of February 2021. Just a question through to relevant director or manager with the black versus white. Do we have any? Is this purely for aesthetically that the recommendation is for the black? And has there been any consideration over the black versus white for thermal effect? Is there any data on whether the white is going to be better thermally for the building or not?
I'll go to the relevant director.
Through the chair, I say it's purely for aesthetics in terms of the black highlights the details of the timber and the lattice work. I would say there hasn't been any particular assessment of the thermal impact, but I know as part of the building application that needs to be compliant with the energy efficiency requirements of the BCA, the building requirements.
Okay, so part of the revised application to change that colour through from black to white, it didn't mention anything in relation to thermal capacity or some effects, or it was just purely for an aesthetic application?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors, on this one? No? Okay, could we please get Councillor Bull back in the room? Councillor Bull?
Yep.
Yeah, there.
All good,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, so the next item that's been pulled for a question is item 10.4.9, 2022 Community Events Review. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I just had a question, or two questions. When we had a presentation on this one, I did request a list of all the events that all the departments run, because I took them to be city-led events, and councillors haven't received those lists of what the entire city of Bayswater does.
So you're just confirming that will be sent out?
Yes.
Can I just get confirmation from the director?
Through the chair, my understanding is included in attachment 2, but I might get if the manager of community development wants to confirm that, but that's my understanding. She's nodding yes, it is included in attachment 2.
It is all there? So that's a complete one. Okay. Thank you. And then the other question I had was on page 532. That's 532. Let's have a look. Yes, 532. Halfway down, it has a dot point for number 5 for music in the park. Bayswater, then in Mount Lawley rotating. Just a question about where in Mount Lawley that would be planned to be held.
I'll go to the director.
The chair, I might get the manager of community development, Ms Gray, to answer that, please.
Through the chair, we'd have to take that on notice and come back to you.
Okay, thank you. My suggestion would be that would have to be looked at because we don't own any public open space in Mount Lawley. Yeah, thank you.
Councillors, are there any other questions on this item? No. Okay, thank you. That's all the items that I've been advised of that there are questions regarding. I'll just go around. Is there any other items that councillors would like to ask questions on? Councillor Bull?
Thank you. Just on 10.3.2, which is the Embleton low-cost plan, treatment plan, just the same question for 10.3.1 that I asked if it would be possible to receive that information that the officer indicated could be distributed. If the equivalent information for 10.3.2 could be distributed also, that would be fantastic.
So I'm just looking at the officer and he's nodding, so I believe you'll receive the same type of spreadsheet with that information for the Embleton precinct.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. So I didn't get back to you with the question on 10.5.1. Proposed temporary closure of Railway Parade Bayswater. I'm just wondering if I can ask if we received any plans for the viaduct that has proposed as part of this build?
I'll go to the director.
Yeah, through the chair, we've received some plans, I think it was just last week, that are more engineering details rather than renders, showing exactly what it would look like. But we can chase them up to see if they have any other plans available.
Thank you. Have any made public at the moment? Any renders?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors, on this item? No. Any other items you'd like to ask questions on? If not, I will now close the agenda briefing forum at 7:40 p.m. Thank you, councillors.
Yeah.